This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Nikki Haley is behind former President Trump by more than 20 points in two new polls released today for South Carolina. That primary is just 4 days away. And Ms. Haley says she's staying in the race. Both Trump and President Biden, meanwhile, are preparing for a rematch of the 2020 contest. So is there a path forward for Haley, or is this all really general election politics right now? On that note, let's go to Cliff Young of Ipsos, who is joining me here in our Washington, D.C. studio. So, Cliff, obviously Nikki Haley is still trying to act like there is something of a contest. Much of the electorate, though, doesn't really think that there is one, and frankly, don't really like that may be the outcome, that it's going to be Biden versus Trump. And yet that's where they are. Is there an issue, something that could catalyze someone like Nikki Haley, an alternative that would change that?
I think it's really difficult. I mean, obviously, anything could happen. An asteroid could hit the Earth. Things could change, right? But really, the numbers are baked. Trump is leading by a lot in South Carolina and really across the United States in general. I think it's a done deal. It's a foregone conclusion that we're going to have Biden and Trump in the generals.
So with that said, Cliff, this is Joe in New York, and it's good to see you. I appreciate your being on with us. What should our listeners and viewers be looking at when it comes to polling right now? Because we're seeing remarkable continuity, even in a small sample in South Carolina, where polls seem to be indicating the same thing. Yet we're told frequently not to pay attention to national polls because there's so much noise at this stage of the game. There's so much confusion over the sample. What's your take?
Yeah, you have to look at both. You have to look at the nationals. On the one hand, they say something, they're atmospherics, they give you a temperature of the country. You have to look specifically at states, especially in a system where the swing states are so important with the electoral college system. But what I would say to viewers is that really pay attention to issues right now. Don't look at the ballot question, the matchup at this point. We're really far out, and they tend to be not very accurate at this point. And really look at what are those issues that Americans are worried about.
So what are those issues right now? It feels like up until in the last several months, we were saying it's economy, full stop, number one, always. And yet the border, as we saw evidenced in Iowa and New Hampshire in these early Republican primary contests, was possibly even topping the economy. Are you seeing that reflected in your data?
We're seeing a changing issue set. So it was the economy. It still is the economy. People are worried about that. People are having problems making ends meet, but that's changing. Things are getting more positive. And without a doubt, immigration, the border is a key issue. Crime is another one. Saving democracy is a third. And we're not quite sure which one will come to the fore and be most important for Americans this electoral season.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was really struck. I think I can speak for Kaylee as well. When we were in Iowa and New Hampshire to watch immigration step in front of the economy, and in some cases by a long shot when it came to voter priorities in those two states, the caucus and in the primary. Cliff, we saw research from Goldman Sachs that was on Bloomberg today that finds Joe Biden's economy might be right around the dividing line. By the time we vote in November, the line that separates winning re-election campaigns from losing ones based on history. It's almost like this is going to come down to who scores last in a long basketball game. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, this is basically, March Madness, right? But it's an entire electoral system. Yeah, I see it the same way, that we're going to really go up to the end. The last sort of inch or the few inches, it will be an election of inches. The economy is going to be very important. But the immigration and immigration issue, the border, really gins up the Republican base, will be very important for mobilizing them. If it's not the issue, it'll be an important secondary issue. So once again, it's going to be a close one. The economy will be important, but these other issues like immigration will be as well.
Let's talk about the issue, though, of just the age of these candidates. This is something Nikki Haley has been talking a lot about, the idea that, yes, President Biden is 81, but Trump is only 4 years younger than him at 77. And you've actually done some polling that shows 59% of Americans think they both are too old to serve second terms. But it feels like, Cliff, that we mostly just talk about the age question when it comes to the incumbent president, not the former one as much.
Yeah, 59%, a majority believe that both are too old, but something like 27% of the rest believe that Biden's too old, and only 3% believe that Trump is too old. So you have, on average, more Americans believing that Biden's too old. In other polling, what we find is Trump is seen as more energetic. There's more vitality there, is not seen as sort of old as Biden. Whether that's an issue that really weighs in the end, because obviously voters use a variety of factors to decide on who they're going to vote for, we will see. But definitely Biden is in a weaker position relative to Trump at this point.
So voters appreciate honesty, at least we're told, Cliff. Does Joe Biden embrace the age issue? They can't have him running up and down the stairs. That's obviously not going to work. If he keeps people laughing about it, if he keeps acknowledging it, does it help him?
I don't know if it helps him, but it doesn't hurt him. And what he wants to do is distract a bit. It's a very difficult issue to have stuck to you. Obviously, as you age, you can't really go backwards, right? Yeah. And it is an anchor for him, or an Achilles heel. Once again, there are many other factors that will come into play, like an anti-Trump vote, which is very strong. Anti-Trump vote might trump actually age, but it's something that Biden will have to contend with, and there's no easy answer.
Well, on the subject of the anti-Trump vote, also on what you referenced a few minutes ago, the idea that American democracy being at stake is an issue that is starting to really show up in the minds of voters. We could be very well dealing with, just a few months from now, a Republican nominee who is a convicted felon in the United States, as his New York criminal trial will begin on March 25th. How could that change the game here?
First, we don't know. That's the first thing. We really don't know. Some of our initial polling suggests that it would hurt him on the margins. It would shave off a point or two here and there. But we're really not really sure about it. Ultimately, our polling on basically indictment has suggested that he can weather through it. So, net of everything, I think he probably is hurt a bit, but not completely taken out.
Is there a difference between conviction and sentencing? Our polling at Bloomberg would suggest that actual prison sentences might make people feel differently.
Yeah, I think there's qualitative differences between being indicted, being convicted, and then going to jail.
Yeah.
Once again, how much that weighs against him, we will see. He will definitely, Trump will definitely frame that as being politically motivated and really being unfair. But this is a wild card we have this electoral season that we're really unsure about its specific effect.
Just think of how much we have to learn together, Cliff Young. He joins us from Ipsos. It's great to see you back on the program. Thank you, Cliff. Coming up, a credit card mega merger. We've got more on the tie-up here between Capital One and Discover next on Balance of Power, Bloomberg TV and Radio.